When we think of military camping gear, our minds jump to modern ultralight packs and titanium stoves. But more than a century ago, soldiers of the Great War carried a field kit so practical, efficient and rugged that much of it still puts today's gear to shame. These weren't fancy gadgets or mass-produced luxuries. They were the essentials designed for a man marching 30 miles a day, eating in mud, and sleeping in the open with the enemy only a few hundred yards away. The WWI camp kit was born out of necessity, not marketing, and it embodied every principle modern backpackers claim to value: minimalism, durability, and adaptability. The question we're tackling today is simple. Could you take a World War I soldier's camp kit into the wilds of 2025 and still thrive? The short answer is yes, and here's why. The original camp kit was built around survival, not comfort. In World War I, soldiers didn't have the luxury of extra weight or gear that served only one purpose. Every ounce counted. The standard British and German field kits were stripped to the essentials: a mess tin, a water bottle, a blanket or greatcoat, a small folding stove or fuel tin, a knife, and basic hygiene tools. There were no sleeping bags, no nylon tents, no gas stoves. The gear had to work in freezing rain, mud or snow, and it had to be repairable in the field. The British 1908 pattern web equipment, for example, included a small mess kit made from tinned steel that could double as a pot, pan or plate. Soldiers boiled tea in it, fried bacon in it, and used it to melt snow for drinking water. The Germans had their Kochgeschirr, a kidney-shaped mess tin that fit snugly against the pack, and came with a tight-fitting lid for cooking. These designs were so functional that modern camping cookware still copies them. For a modern backpacker, that same principle applies. One tool that can serve 3 or 4 purposes beats any amount of high-end gear. A single pot that can cook, eat from, and store food is exactly what WWI soldiers relied on, and that's still the smartest way to pack light in 2025. Sleeping and shelter were lessons in efficiency, not luxury. WWI troops rarely had the privilege of tents as we know them. Instead, they relied on half-shelters, small canvas sheets that could be buttoned together with another soldier's to form a 2-man bivouac. These shelter halves were waterproofed with linseed oil or wax and could also be used as ponchos, ground cloths or stretchers. They were heavy compared to modern materials, but they were incredibly versatile. Today's minimalist tarp setups for backpackers are direct descendants of those early designs. With a few adjustments, the concept still holds. A wax canvas or treated cotton tarp, though heavier than nylon, has one major advantage. It doesn't melt near open flames and can be repaired easily with a needle and wax thread. Soldiers would bed down with their greatcoat as both blanket and sleeping system. It wasn't warm by itself, but, combined with straw, pine boughs or spare clothing underneath, it trapped body heat effectively. The concept remains solid, really. Modern survivalists still layer natural insulation beneath their sleeping setup to stay off the cold ground, a method more reliable than even expensive air mats if done right. If you want to recreate this, try sleeping outdoors with a wool blanket and a tarp shelter. Use dry leaves or grass as a base layer. It's a timeless way to test your cold weather adaptability, and it's a technique those men depended on nightly. Cooking gear and rations were designed for endurance, not taste. A soldier's stove during WWI was as simple as it gets. The British had the Tommy cooker, a small folding frame that burned solidified alcohol tablets, and later the more efficient Benghazi stove made from used food tins filled with sand and petrol. German and Austro-Hungarian troops often built trench stoves out of scrap metal or bricks. Meals were basic: hardtack biscuits, tinned meat, dried vegetables, but the emphasis was on caloric survival, not flavour. If you're a modern camper or prepper, these stoves still hold surprising value. The Esbit stove, developed from wartime designs, remains a favourite among ultralight hikers because it's compact, burns clean, and needs no moving parts. You can easily make your own trench-style cooker with 2 tin cans, a bit of sand, and liquid fuel. The real lesson here is adaptability. Soldiers learned to cook anywhere, with whatever was at hand. For a modern backpacker, this mindset matters more than owning the latest gear. Whether you use alcohol stoves, wood gasifiers, or old-fashioned coals, the goal remains the same: reliable heat from minimal equipment. Personal maintenance was part of survival, not vanity. The World War I camp kit wasn't just about food and shelter. It also included items for hygiene and field repair. A small tin of shaving soap, a straight razor, a needle and thread were as vital as a rifle. Soldiers learned quickly that neglecting hygiene led to disease, frostbite, or trench foot. For the modern outdoorsman, that same principle applies. Keeping socks dry, maintaining your boots, and cleaning cooking gear can mean the difference between comfort and misery on multi-day hikes. WWI troops didn't carry spare gear. They repaired what they had. Wax thread, a bit of leather, and a sewing needle could fix everything from torn webbing to leaking boots. This kind of make-do mindset is what modern preppers call fieldcraft. If you can fix, clean, and repurpose your kit in the field, you're already ahead of 90% of casual campers who rely entirely on disposable gear. Why does the World War I camp kit still hold value for today's backpackers? Well, the beauty of the Great War's field kit really lies in its simplicity. It worked because it was designed for real hardship, you know, while modern materials have made things lighter and a bit more comfortable. The core principles haven't changed. Protect yourself from moisture, stay insulated from the ground, cook with minimal fuel, and, of course, maintain your tools. In fact, many modern bushcrafters are returning to World War I-style setups because they actually force you to master skill over gear. A waxed canvas tarp, a wool blanket, and a steel mess tin teach you how to manage weight, fire, and shelter in ways that synthetic comfort just never will. And perhaps more importantly, they reconnect you to the long human tradition of outdoor endurance. A tradition soldiers on both sides of the war perfected through daily necessity. If you ever doubt the relevance of century-old gear, just take a reproduction World War I mess tin or wool blanket into the woods for a weekend. You'll find that, though it's heavier than your titanium gear, it's quieter, more reliable, and, well, strangely grounding. The lessons from that era aren't outdated. They're enduring truths about how humans survive outdoors. The World War I camp kit was more than a soldier's backpack. It was a lesson in disciplined living, resourceful thinking, and survival with what little you had. 100 years later, those same principles still hold power for anyone who ventures into the wild. If you enjoyed this deep dive into forgotten fieldcraft and the enduring wisdom of the past, make sure to subscribe to Echoes of Valor and share this with a fellow history buff or survivalist. The old ways aren't dead. They're just waiting for the next generation to rediscover them.